Hey Gearheads, and welcome to GT Garage Talk, a discussion about all things automotive. I am your host Cory, and on today's episode, I'm very excited. This is multiple years in the making. This is following up with a couple good friends of mine in their second go round at the all-female, all map and paper, no GPS Rebelle Rally. And yes, I am talking about Team Brute Squad, made up of navigator Jill Ciminillo and driver Kristen Shaw. I've known both of these ladies for several years now, and we interviewed them together last year after their first ever go round at the Rebelle Rally. And they came back around again in the same Hyundai Santa Cruz that they nicknamed Sandy. From their adventure last year. There were some changes, some tweaks that were made to the vehicle. We'll talk about that throughout the episode. And we really kind of get into what made this year different, what they learned from it, what Hyundai learned from it, maybe some potential future things. Of course, none of us are employed by Hyundai, but we can wish, we can dream, as we all are automotive journalists. So there's a lot going on in this episode today, but I do want to talk a little bit about their vehicle and about what the rally is. So the Rebelle Rally, as I mentioned, is an all-female participant event, and I believe there were something like 65 two-person teams registered for this year. The Rebelle Rally covers 2,500 kilometers of terrain across the Nevada and California desert, and it is all done with old school maps. There's no GPS, there's no cell phones, there's none of the modern navigating conveniences that we've become so accustomed to in 2023 and the modern era. So as the navigator for Team Brute Squad, Jill was constantly snatching up maps and plotting out points and planning their adventures each and every day. And as we will get into it, the Santa Cruz, being piloted by Kristen Shaw, it has some modifications to it. I'll go ahead and list off. They have a custom front bumper and skid plate for additional protection underneath. That is really the only modification the Santa Cruz received for this that you could not, in theory, go out and buy if you bought a Santa Cruz and wanted to build something the exact same or similar to what Team Brute Squad took. They did put larger 17-inch Falcon Wild Peak AT3W off-road tires for better ground clearance and to help with some of the crazy terrain that Kristen will bring up, and Jill too, later on. Rally Innovations put a front recovery mount and some auxiliary lighting up front. There was a roof rack mounted light bar attached to the Hyundai Genuine accessory crossbars. So that's, again, available from Hyundai. There was a rear tire mount with max tracks and shovel mounts. There was a trucks lift kit, 1.5 inches up front and 1 inch in the rear. And then some additional things for the rally. A rally computer, a new graphic wrap around the outside of this one, and per the event rules, all the antennas and connected services of the Santa Cruz were disconnected for this event. So that was the vehicle, that was the course. Now let's get into the people who made this possible with Kristen Shaw and Jill Ciminillo. How are y'all?
Tired.
Excellent.
That
Good.
very apropos. Although I will say, Jill, you did just get back from across the pond, so to speak, with Volvo. So I'll give you that one.
Well, Kristen did too, but she went back a day earlier, so I've had an extra day to get used to the time zone. only to come back and then have stupid daylight savings kick in. My body is all messed up.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
terrible travel schedule for you right there.
Yeah. Yeah. But I'm good but tired. How's that?
Good, good. Kristen, how about you?
I am good. I am always on the go. I have an eighth grader, getting ready to pick him up at school. I've got articles due today for road and track and all kinds of stuff going on. But it's a great life. Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, we're doing this interview while you're sitting in a Bentley, so life is good, right?
So, life is so good.
So we'll get straight to the point because I did just pick up my son from school. I know you are about to pick up yours. The whole conversation here stems from your second time together in the Rebelle Rally with the third member of your team, Brute Squad, in Sandy, the Hyundai Santa Cruz. And just so much to get into. Kristen, what was it like, kind of, so to speak, getting back into the saddle? Very familiar vehicle, but a very challenging course, I'm sure.
It was. It was even more challenging this year than it was last year. And we heard that from a lot of the competitors. The floods of August wiped out so many trails and caused these huge ruts. They had to redo the course several times. And we got to see some amazing and beautiful places, but it was really challenging. And I'm sure it was super challenging for Emily Miller and Jimmy Lewis and all the people that were designing the actual course.
Yeah, and I will say Kristen had the brunt of the Mother Nature's hell fury because she was the driver this year. Last year we switched places back and forth, but this year she was the driver and I was the navigator. And it was really funny because like at night or in the morning I'd be like plotting points on the map and she's like, "What can I do? What can I do? What can I do?" And I'm like, "Oh, just you wait. Your time will come." And she's like, "But I'm not busy now." And I'm like, "But you will be." And the train was just, it was really really tough. And there were a couple of times like we saw a Toyota Tundra like fly through an obstacle and we're like, "We got it." And we're like, "Nope, nope, we do not got this." And so I mean there were times I would go up and I would try and spot her through something, but we just didn't have the wheelbase or the ground clearance to make it through some of the challenges that were created for us this year. And so instead we ended up going around like 10 kilometers the wrong way to get where we needed to be. But those are the decisions you make and the things that you have to do sometimes. And so Kristen, I think, definitely had a huge challenge this year with the terrain and she managed it beautifully.
Jill is my one person hype squad. She's amazing. And I was so relieved to not do the navigation this year because that's a lot of math and it's really difficult and challenging and scary to me. So Jill tackled that and did an amazing job. But I told her too, I think this year I feel like I just kind of skated because I did just drive and the driving was challenging, but I am going to be focusing this year on really brushing up my navigational skills so I can be more of a help to Jill for next time.
So that was an interesting thing that I kind of saw from your competition last year, that y'all traded out days driving, navigating. And I know last year y'all said that wasn't as uncommon as I saw it from my vantage point, but moving this year to a sole driver and a sole navigator, did that allow each of y'all to hone in a whole lot better on your one opportunity and kind of relieve half of the stressors or some of the stressors that may or may not have been with you before? Jill, I guess I'll go to you since you were navigator this year.
Yeah, I mean, to me, I think it did because I knew what my job was. And, the first day is always like the prologue day, day zero is always the toughest as you're trying to like get your brain back in the scramble and, remember your rhythm and figure things out. But by day three, you're pretty much getting into the groove of what your job is and what you're doing. And I knew Kristen did not have fun with the navigation last year, and I didn't mind it. So that's why I offered to take it on. And I'll be honest with you, I kind of like it. I'm sick that way. I love torturing myself with a magnifying glass and getting up at 4 a.m. so that I can, pounce on the maps at 5 a.m. when they're available, and the plot points. And but no, I mean, I actually enjoyed it, and I felt like, um, I learned something new every day that I was able to apply to the next day. And, I feel like our first day, ironically, was our strongest day. I feel like we got something like 80% on that day. I love day one. Day one was awesome. But I mean, even though like things got harder, the terrain got a lot more difficult. And, then you're going into open off-road areas where there are no roads, and you're just like, let's go that way. So navigationally things got a little bit more challenging. But I still learned, and I still felt like I got into my groove, um, by doing the same thing every day. I miss driving. I absolutely miss driving. I think that's often very fun, but I'll be honest, with the challenges of the terrain this year, I was like, have fun with that, Kristen. Enjoy. Have fun going over that, wash right there, and try not to get us buried, because I'm going to have to be the one that does the digging. Yeah. Please don't get us buried.
So to that end, Kristen, it sounds like the course, and you alluded to it in your first answer, is a whole lot more worn this year and provided more of a challenge. Was it a relief in the sense that you were able to just focus on the driving aspect of it? Could you imagine doing this year's course and swapping back and forth, in other words?
No, I love the challenge of the navigation in theory, but in practice, I would rather be the driver. I feel like that suits my personality a lot better. I love driving, and I know Jill likes driving as well, of course, but I love driving, and I like the challenge of figuring out how to make the drive as smooth as possible for my passenger, knowing that Jill was going to be navigating on the fly. Yep. And I try to just find the smoothest line, the best course. We had some pretty gnarly places where there was a big trench on either side of the wheel, and I had to kind of either straddle it or, and in some places, like there was this one trench when I think it was day 6, and we rode right the trench next to the old canal, and it was really bumpy going through the middle. So I was riding up the side, kind of like the scene in Grease, where they're racing and they're going up the side of the thing. That's what I was doing, and that brings me so much joy.
Yeah, we took a Polaris Ranger side-by-side out off-roading this past weekend, the whole family, my wife, my son, and Holly hasn't done a lot of off-road driving, so we got into one spot, and I was like, well, do you want to get out and spot me, or do you want me to get out and spot you? And, well, wouldn't you know it, she took the wheel and let me get out and spot her in a very similar situation where there's like this giant ravine that you've got to keep in the middle of the vehicle to make sure, if you end up in it, who knows if you go sideways and things like that. So there are fun aspects of both of your jobs at work here, making sure spotter, navigator, things like that. Jill, for you, I picked up on something. Do you not get the entirety of it map wise, the entire course? You get those day by day and have to like Kristen said, kind of go on the fly?
Well, it varies from year to year. Last year, like on day one, we got all of our maps.
Okay.
For the entire rally. But this year they only gave us 7 maps on day one, and then they gave us the final 5 maps about halfway through. And then there was a challenge that we didn't do where you had to turn in your detail maps, and they essentially gave you a blank piece of paper to go and find some checkpoints in an OHV area. We were running out of time, so darn it, nerf, we couldn't take advantage of that challenge. But the big thing is even when you have all of your maps, you don't have the entire layout of the course. You get 20 to 26, or in the case of one of our overnights, 43 plot points. So longitude and latitude points that you have to find on the map. And, I found that it takes me about an hour to plot 20 to 25 longitude and latitude points. And that, I mean, that just fills your time. And sometimes you don't even get all the way through and you're plotting on the fly. So it's very important for your driver to be smooth as you're trying to use a map ruler and, a magnifying glass to figure out where you are and where you're going. But yeah, so you sometimes they will give you all of your maps all at once, but this year they didn't, and you never have all of the course at once. They give you that day by day. So typically the way it works is you will get a start time depending on how you finished the day before. And so if you are in the top 10, you will get your maps at 5 a.m. And if you're in 10 to 20, you'll get them at like 5:15 a.m. So they give you a time where you will get your maps, and then typically about 2 hours after you get your maps, you're off the line. And so you have 2 hours to plot your points, start your route planning, get your truck loaded, get sorted for the day, eat food, go to the bathroom, maybe brush your teeth. I'll be honest, I never brush my teeth in the morning during the rally. That's what gum is for. And but to do all of those things and then get on the way. And thankfully Kristen didn't mind. She was okay with the gum. But it is a lot to take in on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah. So Kristen, given that you were able to focus on the driving aspect of it, did that mean that pack and prep was your morning routine as Jill was doing navigational stuff?
That is correct. I was the pack mule for the entire route.
So,
and yeah.
Were you able to practice your Tetris skills ahead of time?
Yes, I did practice my Tetris skills, and I was able to pack the tent, everything else into the truck successfully. We had this 6-person pop-up tent that's hilarious.
So that really kind of brings us into the third member of Team Brute Squad for the second year in a row, and that was your Hyundai Santa Cruz lifestyle vehicle, activity pickup truck. It's kind of
trucklet.
Yes, it's one of those. It only has one real competitor, and some people don't even claim the Maverick is a true competitor to the Santa Cruz. But why don't you, Kristen, go into a little bit of what it was like reuniting with Sandy and making sure you were able to get all your gear in with you each and every day?
One thing that we changed this year, last year we had a wonderful cooler from Dometic, and we just couldn't fit it in. This year we decided to sacrifice the cooler because we needed the space for our gear. And we needed to make sure we had access to the gear, like our recovery rope, our soft shackles, our air compressor, everything we had. We tried to keep stuff clean inside the car. And then everything that we didn't mind getting all sandy and dirty and dusty, we put it in the bed. And so every morning I would shove everything in there as much as possible and as cleanly as possible. And then we'd carry on with our day. But I love the way the Santa Cruz is set up. It's so fun to drive. And I feel so comfortable driving it. Like I know what its capabilities are now.
Jill, you alluded to earlier seeing Tundra go flying by and thinking, oh, yeah, we got this. How long did it take for you to recalibrate knowing what you could and could not accomplish in Sandy this year?
It was a constant recalibration. We had a little bit of a heads up of what we were in for. In I think it was August, we were in Ridgecrest for some navigation training with Rebelle U, and we met up with our engineer Eric Buxton after the training, and we're going through some of the OHV areas outside of Ridgecrest, and just encountered a maze of washes and water turrets that were going through roads, and just saw the complete devastation of the terrain, and may or may not have bent a tie rod in that endeavor. But so I feel like we had a little bit of a heads up of how careful we were going to have to be and how tough it was going to be. in that moment. And that was invaluable. I mean, it was invaluable to get that heads up, because I feel like had we not had that moment, we could have really gotten into trouble early in the rally, because like the first 4 days were just a mess in terms of trying to get through roads that weren't roads and going around obstacles that shouldn't be there, and uh and trying to navigate, and so we really had to learn problem solving. And it wasn't just problem solving, oh well, we'll just pick up our phone and map a map it out. No phone.
Yeah.
So it was, okay, we're in the middle of nowhere, we have nobody else around us, what do we do? And of course, at first you try to go through, because that's going to be the quickest, easiest, quote unquote, way to go. But when you find you can't go through, sometimes you have to go around. And while that might not seem like a big deal, like 10 kilometers through rocky terrain is kind of a big deal, and it wastes a lot of time. And even though the Rebelle Rally is not a race, it is time sensitive, and you have checkpoints that you have to get within a certain window of time, and you have to be back at base camp within a certain amount of time, or else you don't get your points for the day. And so it's not like they dock you points or you lose points, but you just don't get the points that you should have, which then puts you a little bit further behind. So 10 kilometers, or what is it, it's like a little bit, and I'm like, now I can't convert it into miles.
6 miles. 6 miles.
6 miles.
Come on, you're a runner.
But yeah, 10K, 5K. I mean, I don't know. So at any rate, even though 10 kilometers, 6 miles doesn't seem like a big deal, like again, it can cost you half an hour, 45 minutes. It's a problem.
I was able to speak with a product manager over at Hyundai about Sandy and some of the modifications that were made. And what is unique to when manufacturers participate at this level is they try and keep them as stock as possible to show the capabilities of their vehicles, but there are some modifications that need to be done. And to my surprise, probably not y'all's, because 2 years in a row now that you've gotten to spend time with her, it was really just the front bumper and skid plates that are not aftermarket available for this vehicle. Everything else could be found on the aftermarket and made available to owners of a Hyundai Santa Cruz. So, Kristen, for you, how were some of the modifications, the wheels, the tires, and things? How did they work beneficially for you as the driver this year?
The biggest, I think last year we had a lift kit on the vehicle. I don't think that changed, but we had 1.5 inches in the front and 1 inch in the back. The biggest difference that I noticed was the front bumper. For us, we had a better approach angle, and the suspension upgrade was also noticeable because we had a smoother ride off road. Yeah, it wasn't, I mean, it really cushioned us a lot more. Now, I came home and my neck was so sore. Like, I could hardly move my neck a couple days later. So I had to go get some therapy.
Jill's holding up her liquid therapy.
Oh, yes. The pain
And
stick.
by liquid therapy, you mean it's a roll-on pain-free gel.
Yes. But yeah, so good suspension and some modifications. Approach and departure angle, I think, kind of get overlooked when everybody's talking about ground clearance and what a vehicle is capable of. But I've experienced it. I know y'all have. Ground clearance doesn't mean anything if you can't get up to and over the obstacle in the first place, right?
100%. Yeah, and that approach angle is key. They did some great work on the front. I would love if they bring us back in the Santa Cruz next year, and we don't know anything at this point, but I'd love to see them put more of a skid plate in the front, maybe even more of an approach angle. I mean, there's lots of things that they want to do. It's a matter of time and money and how does this fit into their plan for the Santa Cruz? Most of the market is going to drive it as is,
Right.
but for us there wasn't a benefit to go bone stock. It helped us tremendously to have bigger, fatter tires, to have that upgrade on the suspension and to have the lift kit and the new front bumper. All of those things helped us a lot.
Yeah. I did ask the team over at Hyundai. For one, I was like, as I mentioned earlier, how much of this is available to consumers if they wanted to make their own off-road Santa Cruz? To say, look, mine is just like Team Brute Squad's that competed in the rally. The other thing was, like, if you do these, will they void your warranty? To which they replied, check with your dealers, but it should be. And the last thing was, what post-rally stuff is being conducted by Hyundai? Y'all might be able to answer this from your time with Eric Buxton, the engineer. What learnings do you feel Hyundai can take away from your time in this?
Yeah, so we did a debrief conversation with Hyundai after the rally both years. And, one of the things they pointed out to us is that Hyundai in Korea, that is not an off road culture.
Mhm.
It's just starting to come into their direction. And COVID kind of kick started a lot of the overlanding off-road culture that we see worldwide now, and so it's only been in the past few years that they've really started to think about this idea of overlanding or off-roading and taking your vehicle on an adventure. And uh when they came out with the Santa Cruz in 2022, they did not have an XRT version of it.
Mhm.
But they do now, and they're starting to build XRT versions, which is their more rugged, capable, off-roady looking
Right.
vehicles. They have, I think, Tucson, Santa Fe, and now they've got the Santa Cruz, and so they're starting to think in that direction. And I feel like a lot of what we are able to do is kind of test
Mhm.
some of the things that they're looking at. Should they offer a standard or a factory installed 1 inch, 2 inch lift? I think our lift was done by Trucks,
Mhm.
and that's TRUXXX. And maybe another X. No, I think it's only three X's at the end. But and should they offer bed rails or racks or bumper bars, that like Rally Innovations provided for us? And so they really want to get into this space, and they want to be able to offer factory installed options, and they want to really think about it. So I think that one of the things that and the benefits that Kristen and I have been able to provide is put this through some real world testing and showcase what works, what doesn't work, what could be tweaked. We talked about the bed rack that we had installed, and it was installed last year, and it was like, okay, did that work for you? And we're like, yes, but we would love to have, instead of strapping the Max Tracks on, we would love to have some pins
Mhm.
that we could unscrew, and so we made a couple of little bitty modifications. And I think down the road, some of what we're testing and what we are finding could find their way into factory installed products or into the products themselves. And I think that's kind of cool.
Yeah, I think it'd be really cool if they had like a XRT Rally edition, and it was practically all the same modifications from the factory with a warranty, all financed under the same monthly payment. That would be really awesome. But you had kind of brought up something that I hadn't really thought of before, and that this Korean automaker hasn't really played in the off-road space. This is new to them. And yes, we are seeing those XRT models kind of trickle down. It's interesting. The Palisade has an XRT now. It's not typically a vehicle that I would have associated with XRT. But Kristen, you had mentioned if y'all come back next year in the Santa Cruz, which kind of leads me to believe they've got this new Santa Fe that looks like a Land Rover Defender light. It would be so cool to see Team Brute Squad take a Hyundai Defender, so to speak, and really test the chops of this new off-road beast. So, Kristen, I know we're having a little connectivity issues, but what are some of your takeaways from year two in Sandy, as far as what Hyundai can kind of learn from this moving forward?
I think that the trend for overlanding and off-roading has become such a big thing.
Mm-hmm.
And Hyundai is smart to test the waters of it slowly. I mean, they are so on the rise. And
Mm-hmm.
Hyundai and Kia both have just really been killing it in the market, doing awesome. I would love to try out the new Santa Fe XRT. That would be awesome. But we also love that Santa Cruz.
Mm-hmm.
It really, we've gotten to showcase its capabilities as a sport adventure vehicle.
Right.
Like really stressing the adventure part. And I think that people are are figuring out what they can do with their vehicles, but maybe they think that they need a truck or maybe they need a Land Rover, which those are great vehicles too. It depends on how far you want to go.
Yeah.
Like, do you want to get to Moab? Do you want to just maybe go camping at a local state park?
Right.
But the possibilities are endless. So I think the Santa Cruz, we learned a lot about the edges of what it can take, and it came through with flying colors.
Yeah. So, Jill, you had mentioned earlier a tie rod. I believe I saw on Instagram, Facebook, on a story, maybe a sway bar issue. What can you tell me about? I know this is all kind of experimental for them, but what didn't work? What may have broke, and under what circumstances?
Well, so I want to stress that nothing, nothing was Hyundai's fault.
Right.
The terrain this year was so bad, and we were lucky. We found this out after the fact. So there were 65 teams that competed this year.
Mm-hmm.
10 did not have a flat tire.
Wow.
We were one of those 10.
Nice.
So I mean, we like the vehicle performed incredibly well and did an amazing job, but it was super harsh for everybody. Like I feel like pretty much everybody visited the mechanic at least once this year. And our specific issue that we had is we bent a control arm connected to the sway bar. So we didn't hurt the sway bar. The sway bar was fine, but the control arm bent. And so the mechanics took a look at it and they're like, well, we could probably straighten it out for you, but it would be a lot of effort. And why don't we just take your sway bar out? You don't need it. People usually take it out anyway. So why don't we just take it out? And he's like, you'll have a much more fun time in the dunes without it anyway. And we were like, oh, okay. But how is it going to perform on road? Because we still need to drive this back to San Diego after this. And like, it'll be fine. I haven't had a sway bar in my vehicle for like 10 years. It's fine. And we're just like, okay. And I have to give a huge shout out to the mechanics who help with the rally. They are, I'm not going to swear, but there's an F word in my mind right now. They are awesome. They are blinking awesome, because they literally, there was a, you want to talk about problems that we didn't have, thank goodness. There was a Jeep that literally, they took the whole underside of the Jeep apart. Like, they took it apart. There were parts everywhere. And within like 14 hours, they took it all apart and put it back together again to fix the problem. And I can't even remember what the problem was, but these guys are top-notch, amazing mechanics, and they work all night. They don't get anything, they're not eating regular meals, that they don't get a lot of sleep, and they are amazing. And so I wouldn't say that there was anything necessarily that broke. It was just the terrain was so tough, and we just, I mean, they're just situated like, we're lucky and we didn't have any other problems, and I am counting my lucky stars that we did not have like a flat tire, because changing a flat tire in those conditions would have been just miserable. Because I mean, we started out and overnight it was 16 degrees, so it was really cold, and we slept outside in that. And then you end and it's like 104 degrees, and so like, I don't want to change a tire in any of that.
No, absolutely not. But that is awesome. So 10 of the 65, That is impressive, especially given all the course challenges that y'all said y'all experienced and everyone experienced this year, just from Mother Nature taking her toll. So, Kristen, I had to pivot to you. With the removal of the sway bar, what was that like before versus after?
It was awesome in the sand. And they told us it would be. They said this, you're probably going to like this even better. This is what Jeep owners do. They remove their sway bar. So it was so fun. Like we were going 30 miles an hour, 40 miles an hour down the sand, well, maybe 30, down the sand highway. And it just, the wheels articulated separately, and it was an even better ride. We had a blast. I had a blast driving in it.
See, so, going back to the question of your post-rally interview and I forgot the word you used, but conversations with Hyundai, disconnectable sway bars. Always disconnectable sway bars.
Just take it out. You're fine without it. We don't need it. It's fine. It's fine. Just
I was just in the Jeep Grand Cherokee Trailhawk, and the Trailhawk version has an electronic disconnecting sway bar, and the Overland doesn't. And I had a bunch of questions from one of the groups. I was like, hey, 4xe group, we've got this one coming. Anything y'all want to know? And that was a big question because there were a bunch of people shopping the Overland trim and a bunch of people shopping the Trailhawk trim. And I was like, if you plan on doing any quote unquote serious off-roading, get the Trailhawk because that sway bar disconnect is a game changer. So yes, I can imagine how much more fun you had after the fact. It was one of those whoops, oh no, gotta take it off situations. Oh darn.
Yeah, we bent that connector pretty good.
Yeah. So that kind of brings me to y'all were competing in the X-Cross class?
Yeah,
correct.
So, Kristen, what were some of the other vehicles in that class that you...
There were 2 Honda Pilots, 1 Honda Passport, a 2007 Honda Ridgeline, a Subaru Outback. I think it was an Outback. Is that it? Oh, and there was a Kia Telluride X Pro, which was driven by stunt driver Verena May.
Awesome.
And the Mustang Mach-E.
There was also the Ford Mustang Mach-E rally version, and that was cool to see that also driven by a professional driver.
And that was new this year. I remember seeing it at Detroit. They had a couple of them there showing them off, and they disappeared before the actual show started. So, but cool stuff. To that end, I will be interviewing one of the teams driving one of the Honda Pilot Trail Sports, in Emily Winslow and Mercedes Lilienthal and Team Nor'Wester. So if you are a listener of this podcast, absolutely stick around for that episode. I know from previously interviewing y'all and them and some other rally participants over the years that it's like a big family, right, Jill?
Yeah, no, it really is. And, so speaking of Emily and Mercedes, on day one, we were in the middle of a forest. And this is the day of the eclipse that the eclipse happened. So October 14th. And we're in the middle of the forest and we bumped into them, and they were like a little bit turned around. And so we were consulting maps together. And they were like, well, we think the blue checkpoint is here. And I was like, well, I think it's here. And I think we need to take this road to get there. And they're like, how confident are you in that? And I'm like, I'm pretty confident. And they're like, okay, we're following you. And I was like, all right. And so that we traveled together to get to the next checkpoint. And so there's a lot of that happens during the rally where it's just like, I'm not quite sure where I'm at, or I think I'm here. Can I double check this with you? Can we talk about this for a minute? And most teams, unless they're getting ready to time out or they're trying to be very, very competitive, will take the time to stop and chat and help set you right or point you in the right direction. There was one day, I can't remember which day it was, maybe day 3 or day 4, and we were in an OHV area, and I took us to a blue checkpoint, And I was just like, well, we're at the blue checkpoint, but I don't see where we are, and maybe it's not the right blue checkpoint. And somebody comes up behind us and they're like, oh, you got to checkpoint 3. And I was like, checkpoint 3? I thought this was checkpoint 2.
Oh no.
And so I managed to get us to checkpoint 3 without hitting checkpoint 2. And I was like, okay, now I have no idea where we are, because I thought we were all the way over here, but yeah, no, we're right here. So they stopped to chat with us for a couple minutes. It was the team in the BMW X2. Oh, that was another X-Cross one, BMW X2. They stopped to chat with us for a hot minute and kind of pointed us in the right direction. And I was like, yeah, I have no idea how I managed that one, but points.
Yeah, that BMW X2, one of the teammates on that one I have interviewed before, they unveiled that vehicle for the rally. Like, I remember it was the week of the rally, and they're like, oh, here it is. Because Sedona was posting that she was going, but like, I knew y'all were taking Sandy, and I knew a lot of other vehicles that friends were taking, but it wasn't until like that week she's like, oh, here's our car. And I'm like, oh, they just announced that. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah. Well, and so what's really interesting about that team is they're both navigators.
Yeah.
And and Kristen will probably know the connections better than I, but one of them used to be Lynn Woodward's partner, and the other used to be Emmy Hall's partner. So Emmy and Lynn were the drivers, and those were their navigators, and so they teamed up this year. And I believe was it Sedona who was the driver? One of them was the driver, and the other
it was Rebecca.
Rebecca was the driver, and then Sedona was the navigator. But yeah, so I don't know. So it's kind of cool. And you bump into these teams, and people, like, once you get the fever for doing the Rebelle Rally, it's kind of like running the marathon. And I say you're either a one and done, or you're just going to keep going.
Yeah.
I'd like to think that Kristen and I are just going to keep going.
I'd like to think that too.
I'm going to keep pulling her with me. You have no choice, my friend.
Jill is an amazing partner. I am lucky to have her.
Yeah.
I can't imagine doing it with anybody else, honestly.
There you go. On that note, I'll end with both of y'all. I know, Jill, you were kind of already alluding to some great memories of this year, but Kristen, we'll start with you. One lasting something that you were going to take with you from the 2023 rally.
There was one night where we had a marathon night, which means there's no base camp. We camped out. We had the choice of 3 different camping sites. And we were rolling over some heavy duty rocks, and we ended up at this campsite. I think it's called Cougar Point, maybe. I can't remember exactly the name of it, but it was breathtakingly beautiful at the sunset. And here was Jill and I. Like, I didn't grow up camping. I didn't know anything about camping, hardly at all. Like, I camped once when I was 14. I did like a school trip, but to be completely self-sufficient, carrying our own gear, tent, water, making our own food, starting up the stove, like, it's so incredibly empowering to do all of these things on our own and see the sights, these places that most people in America never see. It is just, it's just really kind of blows your mind.
Jill, same question. What's one thing that will just stick with you from the 23 rally?
How hard it was. I mean, I would say this is probably one of the hardest things I've done in my life. From the weather, like sleeping outside in 16-degree weather, not my favorite. The terrain was really, really tough. Because this was the second year, I think there are some expectations, and there are things that that you didn't know. And so you feel a little bit more pressure and a little bit more stress because you know more. Right. And so you should be able to do more. But then the weather was so bad and the terrain was so bad. And I mean, I think we did do more, and I think we did better than we did last year, but it was so tough. And I think that's such an important life lesson to have, because it doesn't matter how prepared you are for anything that you're doing, whether it's work or personal, it happens. Yeah. It happens. And you have to find a way to go around it, to get through it, and to deal with it. And so I really appreciated how difficult it was this year, because I feel like every step we took, every mile, kilometer that we drove, it set me up for success in my life. Uh, I have some difficult personal things going on at the moment, and I know it's going to be tough, but I know after doing this Rebelle Rally, like, I can deal with it, I can get through it, I can do it. I can do hard things. And Emily Miller, the founder, one of her favorite phrases is, if it was easy, everybody would do it.
Right.
This is really hard. Only 1% of the population runs a marathon. I don't know what percent of the female population does Rebelle, but I have to imagine it's like 0.0000000000001%.
Right.
Like, very few people have the opportunity to do this, let alone come back and do it again. And I not only can do hard things, I choose to do hard things. And that, goes back to what Kristen said. It's very empowering.
Well, I thank you both very much. It's always great to catch up with both of y'all together. I hope to see y'all next week in LA for the auto show and see y'all there. But Kristen, we'll end with you. Where, I know you said you've got stuff for Road and Track coming due soon. Where can people find you?
Popular Science. I'm usually have an article there every Monday. I do work for Road and Track, Edmunds, and Capital One, and wherever else I can find. Oh, I've got something coming up at Inside EVs as well with Patrick George, the new editor.
Awesome.
And I almost forgot about Drive Mode Show, so you can find it. I don't know. My head is, we're buying a house, Cory. It's a little crazy up in here.
And Jill, I know y'all just hit a huge milestone at Pickup Truck Plus SUV Talk. So huge congrats to 100,000 subscribers over there. I know that has been a labor of love. I am very much looking forward to seeing you play golf and seeing the results of you and Tim going for a run. But where all can people find you?
Yeah, so pickuptrucktalk.com is the website, and then you can search for Pickup Truck Plus SUV Talk on the YouTube channel. I also am a contributing editor for Consumer Guide Automotive. I do the Car Stuff podcast with Tom Appel from Consumer Guide. That is released on Monday, every Monday, and we have a lot of fun with that. We had a good episode this week, so listen to that. What else? Oh, Capital One. I also do some work for them, and just kind of wherever I can, whatever I do. I also have my own YouTube channel. I do a lot of TikTok. I have a lot of TikTok. You can find me on all of the social media channels at Jill Ciminillo, and then I use the hashtag Car du Jour because I'm talking about the cars that I'm driving today. So that's my YouTube channel, TikTok, all of those things.
Well, I will put links to all of that in the show notes for those of you who like to explore further and hear more from each of our guests. Thank you so much, Kristen. Go get your kiddo. Enjoy the rest of your evening. And again, just thank you all for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So huge thanks to both of them for coming on and joining me. We kind of joked there were some connection issues during it, but Kristen was doing the interview from inside a Bentley. It's a very privileged life we all lead, that we get to test some awesome vehicles and get to do awesome things like this Rebelle Rally for the two of them. So lots of fun stuff going on. I thank both of them for taking time out of their day. Just from the conversation, how busy they both are. We've all got deadlines to meet and things to do, but big thanks to both of them. I will put links to follow their main stuff down in the show notes so that you can keep up with both of them. I do consider both of them really good friends. You can keep up with all that we do by finding us at GT Garage Talk on all major social media platforms, or head on over to gtgaragetalk.com. Be sure and give us a 5-star review. Really helps us get this podcast in front of more people. But until next time, Gearheads, bye.